Okay, back for our last week here. We are kind of at an angle. You guys are kind of at an angle to me and to the densitometer here, because I want you to be able to see this number over here. I tried to create a video here just a few minutes ago and then got to thinking I probably was right in the way of that number the whole time I was taking densities, which went back and viewed it, sure was, so now I have to make the video all over again. But that's okay. That's why they pay me the big bucks, I guess. Anyway, here we are. So we're just taking these densities, okay? We just have several densities here. We looked at last week having all of our identification markers on here, which in this case it looks like we've got most of them. Got a penny, got a identification of some kind for a specific person. Here's a number of the date they took this shot. Here's our plate. Okay, here's a couple location markers. Looks like the only thing we don't have on this shot is a couple of edge blocks, which maybe this plate was less than half an inch thick in the weld, so we get away with that. But that's okay. So we're just going to take some densities here. First, we need to make sure this is zeroed out, which it is. If it weren't, we come up here, push the null button. Alright. So now we're going to go back here, just take a couple densities. We're at 2.2. Getting the light part here. They're at a 1.4. Okay, so like we said last week, that would have to be reshot. Out here in the actual base metal we'd be okay, but up here in this weld area, we would need to reshoot that. Okay, so we know some of these are going to be a little light. So there were 2.6, there were 0.9. We'll come back to that one in just a minute. I have several in a row of these castings here. So 1.4, 1.9, and 0.81, alright. So again, we know we're running kind of low. There's a 2.0, there's a 2.7. And I'm just taking density readings all over this thing. Okay, and like I said, I know some of these are low, and that's okay for our intents right now. So we get through all these same castings here. Alright, now we're back to weld plates. So we're taking the lightest area here, 1.8, 2.2, a couple more here, 1.5, okay, 1.57, that's a little light. Same way over here. Okay, so we know those films are light. But we're going to keep those films just to read, just because we want to be able to see what's going on. 2.0, so that's acceptable. And then slide down in there, last one, and we're about 2.0 again. So that's completely fine. We know those low densities less than 1.8 are no good, but we're going to come back and use those anyways for now. If we were actually taking those shots, we wouldn't be able to use them. So, get you guys all turned around here. Arranging a couple of things. Let's get you turned around. Get you over here where you can see what's going on. Got our viewer on, kind of brighten your face. We're going to back off so we can see this whole thing here. Get you kind of scrolled up out of the way. Sorry about that. There we are. Now you're back with us. Couple quick adjustments there, back you out a little bit. Alright, you're off to the side again, but that's alright. So, now we know we have our densities. Now we want to go through and read these films. We want to actually see what these defects are. Okay, so just for quick reference, we slide that guy up there. We're just taking a quick look at it. Let's get you zoomed in a little bit so you can see what I'm talking about. Okay, get you zoomed into the weld. I'm just going to bring you a little bit closer just for fun. Okay? So there you are. We're kind of looking at this overall weld. If you were close enough here, you could see we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines on this. 5 lines on the penny, which you might not be able to see, so I'm going to bring you in a little bit closer. And now you can see them real easy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alright. So looks like we got something here, and we got something else circled out here, but we really can't see it right now. So just taking a once over of the weld, this guy pops right out at us. Okay? And that's completely fine. We see that, but we want to know what that is. So we're going to jump over here to this viewing light, which just happens to be about perfect height. Luckily. I'm going to blind you, so shield your eyes. Okay, you were blinded just for a second there. So now we're back looking at this film one more time. Same film. Let's crank it up a little bit. We're just taking a once over. Okay, bringing the light down. There's that guy again. Okay, we're going to call that a tungsten inclusion, and we'll look at those again here in just a little bit. Then we got something right here. Okay, we got him circled already, but we can't really see it. There you go, that'll be about the right light. If you're looking out here, base metal, looking in here, weld metal, you see this weld metal come in here, and the weld metal dips down. Weld metal dipping down, not necessarily a bad thing, that just means that this is a lack of fill. And if we went back to that same plate, we would see that the weld metal right there on the outside of that weld up against the parent material is just gone. And when that's gone, that just tells us that's a lack of fill. So, no problem. That's just those two defects real quick. Okay, tungsten inclusion. Roll the light back up, lack of fill. Okay, and we know it's a lack of fill because the weld dips back and the parent material is a nice straight line. If this had gone the other way and the weld dipped out and the parent material was gone, we would call that undercut. Okay, which those two are very, very often mistakes. Let's jump to another film here. Okay, one thing we know from radiography that it's not the world's best with crack detection unless you get a good orientation. So we're going to roll this down a little bit, get the light down a little bit lower level. We're looking at something in here, it's kind of irregularly shaped. I'm going to roll the light up and down here just in case you can see it one time and not another. Roll the light up and down here a little bit. And I'm going to call that a slag inclusion. Okay, the reason I want to call that a slag inclusion is because when I'm looking at this, it's irregularly shaped, it's got kind of some volume to it, so it doesn't really look like anything that we would know right off the top of our head. So we're going to call that slag, meaning it's just a pocket of slag in there that didn't get melted away. Okay, there's our sensitivity. And then we jump over here and here's that crack. So if we bring the light down a little bit, again I'm going to roll it through. You might be able to see it pretty easy right there. Roll it up. Okay, maybe you can see it now, maybe you can't, but it's right here above my finger. And then I'm going to roll that down. So it looks to be about a ½ inch long. Roll that down through. Alright, so we see those two. Then we just take one more quick look across, and there's something else we notice here. I'm going to bring you back over to the big light. If we come over here to the big light, and just take a look, alright, you see a basic weld metal interface there, which is completely fine. And if you can see close enough, you can see that this is the root pass. Okay, and the root pass shouldn't be out there by itself. There should be a cap or half a cap, a root pass in the middle, and then half a cap over here. Alright, so that tells us something happened there. We'll get a picture of that on a PowerPoint kind of out online. But if you're looking back here, get you turned over. Okay, so we took that off. If you're looking back over here, you can see there's the bottom of our root pass right there. It's a light area in the middle. And then out here, there's actually some more cap that we can just barely see. Okay? So that tells us that's a high-low condition. So this guy here actually has 3 defects in it. Because there's half the cap up here, there's a root right in the middle, and there's half the cap down there on the bottom. So, alright, we know we have a high-low condition there. Whoops. Kind of blinding you. Turn this guy sideways. Looks like we got 2 films here. Give the camera a second to adjust, bring him down a little bit. We got some circles here already. Oh, there we go. We got something pretty cool right there. These are 2 good places to smack right by side by side here. We've got 2 the same or similar looking defects. I can't really call them the same, but they're very similar looking. Okay, so if we bring that down, there's one right there, there's one right there. Just looking at this, okay, we've got some real nice straight lines here. We come over here, we've got straight-ish lines, but they're not near as straight as that right there. Okay, and you saw from the PowerPoint there that straight lines, okay, real nice, pretty straight lines, they're going to call that a lack of penetration, especially right in the root. Okay, if that's right in the root, we're looking at some very, very clean lines. Clean lines are bad because clean lines propagate. Okay, clean lines turn into cracks real easy. Over here, this is a very similar defect, but it is suck back. Okay, and suck back, what that shows us is where the metal was once there. Okay, the welder had his rod dipped down in there, or MIG welder or whatever, but as he moved too fast and didn't deposit enough material, so it just sucked back on him. Okay, not necessarily a bad thing. You could go back in there and either grind it out or burn it back in, but just right off the top, these two kind of look very similar. It takes a minute to kind of distinguish the both of them. Okay, we got some other circles here, but just minor stuff. We jump over here, okay, and you got all these spots. You can see these spots really easily. Those spots, since they go a little bit everywhere, we could call those a film artifact, but if we were looking at this plate, part of the reason is I've seen this plate before, but another part of the reason is it's kind of characteristic of arc welds, not very characteristic of TIG welds. This is spatter. Welder's making his final pass or making his original pass, and he's burning real hot and got a bunch of stuff happening there. So we got all these little spatter marks. And these spatter marks aren't necessarily bad, they just need to be ground back off. Okay, because every time you have a little localized area like that with some stress concentration points on it, those stress concentration points turn out to be real nice defects or real nice cracks for us. Let's just look at one more here. Okay, that's another crack. Really big line right through here. I'm going to turn you down a little bit. A really big line runs right through there. Okay, I'm going to give you a little more gas just in case that makes it easier to see. That really big line right through there, volumetric, irregularly shaped, kind of travels right through the middle. I'm going to go with the slag inclusion there again. Okay, it's long, something happened to it, it's stretched out. These are the castings. Okay, castings are kind of hard to mess with because they're coarse grained, they're very, very brittle, they don't have a lot going for them, they're really low graded stuff, and that's just the way castings are. That's not a bad thing, we just have to be aware that things like this happen. Okay, get you down a little bit there. We've just got some weird blob right there, and that weird blob is where we had to connect those two, and maybe we didn't fuse this whole thing together. So now we've got areas of non-fusion in there, but they're just cold shuts basically, where you're inside of that casting, and when you're inside of that casting, you have areas that don't fuse because you run out of metal and you're pouring new metal in, and you just run out of gas. Okay? Last one here, kind of a cool one. You see everything kind of circled right here, got a nice green pin on it. Let's bring it down. If you're just looking at this, you can see kind of right off the bat that this area is lighter than the rest of this. Now we know that some of these films were really light to start with, but this area being really light tells us that there's too much weld metal there. If it's a lighter image, it's too much weld material. Okay, and too much weld material is not a good thing either. So, just a quick little overview of some defects. We're going to be looking at a couple PowerPoints. You should be reading in your blue books as well. I'm going to put that out on the assignments, but anyway, hope you had a good week here. Last week in RT3. Next week we'll be jumping into UT3, so, sorry, not UT3, UT1, or we're already in UT1. I get my thoughts mixed up here. But we'll be full-fledged into UT1 is what I should say. Anyways, again, finishing things up, and if you have any questions, you know what to do.